Yeah, recording is on.
Okay, lovely. All right. So if anybody does object to that, if they want when they speak, then please say so and we'll turn it off. Okay. So without further ado, thank you. Let's hand over to Yasser. Thank you very much.
Well, let me begin by thanking you all, and especially to Paul and Jackie for giving me this chance to speak about the mental health conditions of the population in Gaza Strip. I was really honored when Paul sent me the link to the to your web page, and he named me as one of the health heroes. This is really a great honor to me, and I really appreciate it. And hopefully, I'll be able today to give you some information that you will find informative, and will help you get a better understanding of how the conditions in Gaza Strip. So thank you one more again. And I'll try to keep myself short as much as possible and limit the talk to about 20 minutes. And I'll start with sharing the screen. So to speak about the conditions in Gaza Strip is something that is all the time not easy to speak about or not to talk about. But I'll try to bring some facts that are presented on the humanitarian response plan, which is something that is our humanitarian needs overview that was shared by UN OCHA. UN OCHA, it's the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the occupied Palestinian territories or in the state of Palestine. One of the figures that speaking about Palestine at large, and most of those figures, they represent Gaza Strip and West Bank. We speak about the population, which is about 5 million people, 2.45, which is about half of the population, are in need of some sort of support. If you look at that by age, which is very important, something that I would like to highlight, about 1.2 million children are in need for some kind of support when it comes to the Palestinian areas. When it comes to the type of support, you will see, for example, the biggest and the most huge need is the need for protection. What does protection mean? We will come to that. And then the second one is WASH, which is water, sanitization, and then health. And of course, food security is 2 million people are in need for food security. The figures are really staggering. This one is the humanitarian need overview for the year 2021. And this report was issued in December 2020, just a couple of months ago. It's the most recent one. One of the figures that are shown in that report when it comes to this 5.2 million people, you will find that among those 2.45 million or 2,450,000, among them 60% they have severe needs, and then 40% have some sort of stressful needs. But when it comes to the figures between Gaza Strip and West Bank, you will find 1.6 million people in Gaza Strip who are really in extreme need. 1.6 million, that's out of the total population of 2 million people. That's 80% of the population in Gaza Strip are in need for some kind of support. And then it's 0.9 million in West Bank. Now, one would like to say, what kind of support is that and what the figures resemble? The very big one is protection. And when it comes to protection, one would ask, what does it mean, protection? Well, they say that over 2 million Palestinians across the occupied Palestinian territories, 60% in Gaza Strip, 40% in the West Bank, experience a rate of risk of conflict. That's the conflict, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, violence, forcible displacement, transfer, and will be in need for protection assistance in the year 2021. We speak about 2 million people, including 1.3 million people in Gaza Strip. The figures are really huge. The second one, what about water, sanitization, and hygiene? Again, the figures are really extreme and huge. 1.6 million people in need for, or they suffer from insufficient access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. One of the reports that were kept to be showed up recently is that 90% of the people in Gaza Strip do not have access to potable water, unfortunately. When it comes to food, Again, the figures are crazy. In Gaza Strip alone, we have 1.4 million people, which is 70% of the population are simply food insecure. And this includes different factors, which is problems of fishing, problems of herding, problems of farming, and how to maintain those providing the food and to the population. Interestingly, over 217,000 people previously considered moderately food insecure have become severely food insecure, which is again the issue of becoming more and more. If we look at a curve, if we imagine a curve, we see that things are deteriorating over the years. Now, when it comes to health, again, it's not that better. We speak about 1.4 million people, including 1.2 million people in severe need for health support. In Gaza alone, 950,000 people. So what does it mean, health? What does it mean, education, protection? This table shows, and it's again from that report, shows an approximation of the people in need when it comes to education, to health, to protection, to shelter, and to water, hygiene, and sanitization. The interesting thing, if we look at the mental health of things that are closely related to the mental health or the psychosocial needs, you will find the following. About 246,000 are in need for mental health issues. That's within the education system. When we speak about mental health, as a health service, we speak about 255,000 people. We speak about protection issues, which is again a very important aspect of it, a very important factor. When it comes to gender-based violence, that's mainly violence against women, 277,000 women. When it comes to grave violations against children, we speak about 12,000 children. We speak about people who are distressed and they need some kind of support. We speak about more than 500,000 people. So there is a huge number of people who are in need for some sort of intervention. And one would always ask why these figures are staggering. Half of the population are in severe need. Speak about when it comes to the food insecurity, speak about 80% of the population in Gaza Strip. When we speak about protection, 70%. When we speak about other issues, it's again big percentages of people. Well, this is for very obvious reason that Gaza Strip was exposed to different issues in the last, let me say, 70 or so decades, even more than 7 decades, 72 years. We speak about long-term occupation since the 1967. And within that occupation, within that period, you have 70% of the population who are in Gaza Strip are refugees. Of course, we speak about the siege and movement restrictions since 2007. We speak about 3 large-scale military operations. We call them offensives in Gaza Strip, 2009, 2012, and 2014. The cumulative days were 80 days during which the whole society was experiencing continuous fear of bombardment, continuous fears of being attacked, etc., etc. And then in the last 2 years, we had not the last 2 years, in 2018, we had the incidences related to the Great March of Return. And then in 2020, we joined the whole international community in our battle against COVID-19, which continues until now. One of the figures that just to show how it impacted, for example, we speak about the numbers of killed people, the number of wounded people. You will always have those figures that are available. The last 2014 war that was called the Protective Edge, more than 500 children were killed. More than 2,000 people were injured, including the 500 children. We speak about the number of injuries. We speak about more than 10,000 people, and again 3,300 children, which is in generally speaking, we speak about 1/3 of the people who are affected directly, injured or killed are usually children, and then we have a smaller number of people who are affected that are women. This figure also shows the number of people who got injured or killed during the Great March of Return demonstrations that happened in 2019 and 2018, almost 30,000 injuries, including 5,000 children or 6,000 children and 1,500 women. If we look closer at the mental health consequences, They always talk about in GCMHP, some of the research work that we do, it continued to show for various years, after different attacks, that about 30% to 35% of the children who are exposed to traumatic event would usually develop PTSD or might have developed PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. In 2020, in last year report, OCHA expected that still about 210,000 children are in need for, or people are in need for severe or moderate mental health disorders. They need some intervention because they might suffer from or vulnerable to develop severe to moderate mental health disorders. In our community centers, 3 community centers, during the year 2020, the first 6 months, the second half, we still are looking into the data. 23% of the men were diagnosed with depression, while when it comes to women, 37% were diagnosed with depression, which means that we see more of women complaining of depression in our community centers. We are not speaking about the society at large, but we are speaking about the people who are presented to our community centers. Then the second issue is anxiety, but more women, lesser women are diagnosed with anxiety. It's more of men. And then again, we see an increase in the number of people who come to our community centers who are complaining of obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD. Now, the question is that you have those huge needs. This is one of the drawings that come from one of the children that was presented after one of the attacks. I think this is after 2014 attacks. Children, when they come to our community centers, they do some draw therapy as part of their therapy. They do some play therapy. And then this is unfortunately something that comes out of their drawing, something that tells they tell their own story, which is attacks, airstrikes, people who are injured, houses that were destroyed, people who got killed, etc., etc. And then the question is what to do with those conditions, how to do with this thing. And with those things in mind, GCMHP was established many years ago. So let's take a little break of the very rough figures and enjoy this moment with this short clip. Okay, so this is a very brief introduction about the work of GCMHP and why it was started and for which purpose. So the second slide, yeah. So the question is, now with all of these difficulties, what does GCMHP do? Or who can respond to the all huge needs, especially when it comes to mental health and psychosocial services or mental health services? Well, actually, as in any place, the Ministry of Health has its own mental health hospital, psychiatric hospital. But imagine in the whole Gaza Strip, an area of 2 million people, we have only one psychiatric hospital, and it's only for 30 beds. I think it's 30 for men and 30 for women, and that's the whole capacity that that hospital has. Besides that, the work is mainly on community mental health centers. We have 3 community mental health centers that were mostly established since 1990. The Ministry of Health has another 6 community mental health centers where we provide the specialized kind of mental health care. So the Gaza Community Mental Health Program provides that kind of specialized services. And also we provide another kind of services, which is like counseling. And here I would like to say that we do not limit our services to just therapy. We work at 3 levels. We work at primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention, which means we try to prevent the occurring of the disorder. And this mainly involves psychoeducation, involves raising awareness to mental health issues through TV programs, through radio programs, through social media, etc., etc. Then we come to the second level of intervention. Of course, we work in schools, we work with kindergartens, we visit places where people were, for example, in areas that were under attack. We provide psychological first aid. And then if something is presented with a complaint, then we go to the secondary level, which is like, providing psychotherapy and medication therapy. We provide medication to both men and women and to people of all ages, including children and adults. This is the only place in Gaza Strip that offers psychiatric mental health services, or sometimes you call it specialized mental health services, where you have a child psychiatrist in your premises. This is the only place that we have a psychiatric, child and adolescent psychiatric in Gaza Strip. There is only one child and adolescent psychiatric in Gaza Strip, and he works for the Gaza Community Mental Health Program. And then we have at the tertiary prevention, we have rehabilitation. We have a place where we offer occupational therapy to people who are in need to return to their own life, especially those with severe mental health illnesses that affected their ability to communicate and to work and to just to have their normal daily functioning. The number of people who are benefiting from our services varies, but it keeps increasing with years. In 2019, we reached almost 20,000 people. Among those, about 6,500 people received our interventions, whether at the schools or at the kindergartens or at the community centers. About 1,400 people received some training. We offer various kinds of training to various actors in the field, because in order to deal with these huge numbers of people, tens of thousands of people, you cannot work only on your own. So part of what we are doing is that on an annual basis, we provide 30 to 40 training courses. Attendees are between 20 and 30. And we offer them some training on how to provide basic counseling services, how to detect cases, where to refer those cases, and how to provide psychological first aid in times of emergency. Since the year 2014, we have already almost trained 8,000 people, and most of those are now equipped and ready to intervene whenever there is something that is emergent that is happening in any place. Intervene, which means provide psychological first aid, offer some sort of comfort to the population, and if the symptoms are really severe, then they can refer to our community centers. Of course, some of the people benefit from our telephone counseling services. Most of those services were enhanced during the year 2020 because of COVID-19. COVID-19 brought to Gaza Strip a lot of the anxieties, and the anxieties were of 2 types. In April 2020, we did a little survey, And we found that more than 80% of the people are concerned about their children, are anxious and worried about their children, especially because they stopped going to schools, especially about how to deal with the COVID-19 when it comes to children. Now, in November last year, which is like 7 months later, we looked into the community, and most of the people who call our telephone counseling services or who are called in quarantine places or in self-quarantine, their main concern, on the top concern, was the economic hardship, the availability of food, whether they can, because they are locked in their homes, and this was their main concern. One of the things that we have in Gaza is the unemployment rate, which is about 70% among youth. It's 53% in total, but for people under the age of 30, it's 70%. More than 85% of the labor is unorganized, which means that people work from hand to mouth. So when there is a curfew or when there's a lockdown, that source of income just is not there anymore because they cannot leave their homes. They are not paid on a regular basis. And this is one of the biggest concerns that people had in Gaza over the last, let me say, since November and then until now. This map shows Gaza Strip. It's about 40 kilometers in length, and it's about varies in width between 14 and 8 kilometers. The red circles are our community centers. Gaza Community Center, I'm now sitting in the community center, Deir el-Balah Community Center, and then Khan Yunis Community Center in the south. And then those yellow circles, it's where we send our psychologists because we think about accessibility of people. Some people cannot leave their houses because they cannot just offer the transportation cost, which could be less than £1 actually, just to go and return back. But this is, again, for a lot of families, this is a tangible amount of money. And just keep in mind the difficulties that people have. We send one psychologist to one of those CBOs, community-based organizations. The psychologist stays there 5 days a week during working hours, and they offer the services in their premises. Sometimes if people cannot really, if people need more intervention, then we try to offer them transportation to come to our 3 community centers. This photo is for one of the children. This is one of the psychologists. By the way, in each community center, we have a multidisciplinary team, which includes a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a psychiatric nurse, and a social worker. And then we have occupational therapists, and those together form the team that intervenes. In each community center, we have a play therapy room. This is one of our psychologists just providing some kind of intervention or being sitting with one of the children. This child, this child came to our community center about 3 months ago. And the issue with her was a little bit complicated. She was having actually bedwetting. The main complaint was, and then we have some sleeping problems. And one part of the difficulty that appeared, that those symptoms appeared with the lockdown. And interestingly, there was all the time at home some quarrels, because children are not allowed to go out, the houses are crowded, the population is overcrowded, and she was exposed to some sort of violence. And that's why we started to work with her, and later we started to involve her parents. And luckily, things really improved. Now she is in a better condition. Bedwetting still didn't really stop, but it's the frequency is a lot lesser than it used to be. Now, one of the aims, of course, is to make our children as they should be, like any children in their place in the world, which is happy, dancing, enjoying some activities. And this activity, this photo comes from one of the activities that happened, I think, 2 years ago. And it was part of our intervention at one of the kindergarten. You see children who are really enjoying having an open day. So with that, I would like to stop. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it's not, it didn't, I mean, it was short enough and informative enough, but I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, so that was incredible. I mean, so much information in a short time, and the work you're doing is absolutely amazing. I mean, I think words can't express it really, and that was a very moving talk. I think the awful conditions under which people live in Gaza and the huge sense of injustice. I know a lot of us, you know, all of us here feel very, very passionately about that. So thank you for sharing all that with us. And I think for me, the two drawings from the children I found incredibly moving. But I think the fact that you're bringing treatment and hope as well, I think is so important. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, so if people want to speak, ask a question, I think Yasser, if it's okay with you, probably take a few contributions before bringing you back, so that you can maybe, because people may ask similar things, or you may want to thread things together, if that's okay with you. So if you want to say something, please put your hand up. Please try and keep it short, because there will be lots of people I know who will probably want to come in. So first of all, I've got Giancarlo. So I'm just going to ask you to unmute, Giancarlo, and then go ahead.
Thanks very much for that incredible talk, Dr. Jameh. That was really interesting for me to see how healthcare, like formal healthcare services, are set up in Gaza. And I was just wondering that obviously since the Palestinian community is over the years proven to be so good at kind of organizing within their own community and being kind of resilient, self-reliant, I was wondering how much of a dialogue there is in the community, in people's homes and on the streets, about their mental health and about the psychological trauma that they're facing. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Now, right, then I've got Cambiz, Anna, Rachel, Veronica.
Yeah, mine's just a quick
Cambiz.
one, really, and it's only just partially. You mentioned the COVID crisis, and one of the things that has appeared in the newspapers in Britain is how quick the Israelis have been able to start their immunization program, and also how the Palestinians aren't getting any vaccines. So I wondered if there, are any demands which we could be raising about this. Do the various different Palestinian authorities, both in the West Bank and in Gaza, are you making demands on the Israelis, or are you, or what should we be supporting in that regard? Is really my question.
Okay, thank you, Cambiz. Anna.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. I've done it now. Thank you for a really interesting talk. I had a question really about what proportion of particularly health-related services are funded by external charities, NGOs, even external governments, and what level of internal funding there is for these services. And clearly there's a huge shortage anyway, but I wondered how dependent you were on external funding, which I imagine is considerably.
Okay, thanks, Anna. And then Rachel, Veronica, and Paul.
Thank you again, Yasser. That was a really brilliant talk. My question is, I'm really interested to know more about how you deliver psychiatric first aid. And sort of coming in from that, one of my feelings about mental health in the UK is often to do with how the political situations that people come up against and social situations, unemployment, things like COVID crisis directly affect people's mental health. And I often find that in the UK, we're not really very quick to criticise the kind of political structures that adversely affect people's mental health in the way that we speak to patients. And I was wondering how much you relate sort of the political climate in Gaza and how you relate that to people's mental health, whether you think that has any benefit or any role in helping people.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Veronica, Paul, then Jonathan Fluxman. Oh, sorry, I've got to unmute you, Veronica. There you go.
Yes, thank you. As a fellow mental health doctor, I would like to ask what your access to psychiatric medication is like in Gaza. And also, we are hearing horrendous reports about the level of post-traumatic stress disorder among British, UK healthcare workers in the COVID crisis. And with that level of pre-existing psychological trauma in your Gaza population, can you comment on the additional effects of the pandemic and working through the pandemic for healthcare workers in Gaza? Thank you. And thank you very much for such a great talk and all the work you're doing.
Thanks, Veronica. Thank you. Paul, then Jonathan.
Just wondering if Yasser, have you got enough so far, Yasser? And should we let you respond, or do you want to continue with questions?
I could respond. You are the boss. Whatever you think is.
Okay, I've got.
That's probably stacking up a bit. So maybe, what do you think, Jackie?
Okay, well, I've got two people with their hands up. I've got Paul and Jonathan. I was going to let them come, and then I was going to let Yasser come back. So okay. It's all right.
Yasser, you would just briefly tell us, you yourself and your family have been affected by this in I think it was 2014. Just let people know what you personally have experienced in your family. Also, as we've discussed before, the B'Tselem statement come out recently about the nature of the regime between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, which they describe as overall as apartheid and Jewish supremacy. So I'm interested in your response to that and what you think of that statement, the significance of it. But also, in this country, we're very cautious in using terms like Jewish supremacy because we're always afraid we'll be accused of anti-Semitism. And I would like to hear your comment on that, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll take Jonathan, and then Yasser, if you don't mind coming back on some of that, that'd be great. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. There you go. Oops. Have I unmuted you, Jonathan? No, what's happening? Sorry, I'm asking it to unmute you. Why isn't it? Okay, oh, Jonathan's frozen actually. Okay, I tell you what, Yasser, do you mind coming back, and then we'll come back to Jonathan?
List of questions, and some of them are not easy to answer, but I'll do my best. Very important questions, all of them, and I'll try to be short and fast. Sorry about that. Sometimes when I speak fast, things go beyond understanding. So just let me know if I start to stutter or something like that. So dialogue within the community about mental health. We have a problem in the Middle East and in the Eastern culture, which is about the stigma towards mental health. And a good example of that, which is when we began our work in the year 1990, all of the cases that were coming to GCMHP were simply referred by a primary healthcare physician. No one was self-referred. In 2017, we looked again into that, and we found that more than 70% of the people who come to our community centers are self-referred. So there are a lot of more acceptance towards, recognition of the mental health issues and how the general population is affected by the events that happen around the population in Gaza Strip. And we speak a lot about the capability or the capacity of people to go on, to continue moving with their life, and a lot of people call it resilience, which we see. And that's a question that was always raised by people who come and visit Palestine, and they say this is terrible. This is loads of difficulties, how people can survive and how people can go on. They leave, and after 2 or 3 years, they return back for another visit, and they see the conditions getting worse, and they still say, well, it got worse. We didn't expect that, but people continue to go on with their life. There is a strong community cohesion, a strong community support, the family relationship and the family network is very supportive around the population. What COVID-19 did is that it weakened those relationships, made people more vulnerable. So the terrible things that happened, especially for Gazans, and this will answer another question, which was really during COVID-19, we didn't only lose jobs that we were already suffering in the population, but also the social coherence was getting lesser and lesser because of the implications of fighting COVID. You have to social distance. What does it mean, social distancing? It means less communication, less talking, less warm feelings, less hugs, less, etc., etc. And that made the supportive networks weaker and weaker, and it led to more increase in the demand on our services. During the first half of 2020, we received 2,000 new cases, 2,000 cases. And this is the biggest figure ever that we have, this number of patients coming in 6 months since ever. Even after the 2014 operations, military operations, we haven't had really that big number in 6 months period. And it seems that we almost reached 3,900 people that received our services in 2020. And this is the biggest ever figure that we received. Crisis immunization, and that's part of it, and is related to Israel. It's not part of it related to Israel. When it comes, and they'll answer maybe a couple of questions at the same time, especially the ones that were raised by Paul and by a couple of colleagues. Our talk should stem all the time from laws, not from opinions, not from ambitious, not from, let me say, feelings, but from the laws. And there is an international humanitarian law, and there is international human rights law, and they all clearly speak about that the responsibility of an occupier or people under occupation, the health responsibility and many other responsibilities are simply to be made or to be on the shoulders of the occupier. That's it. And this includes, of course, what happened during the COVID-19, that of course includes also what happens regarding immunization. Until now, we heard that almost, I think, more than 2.5 million Israelis were immunized until now, and they started in late November. Until now, the only immunizations that reached, I think, Gaza Strip, not Gaza Strip, but Palestinian areas is 5,000 vaccines, maybe 4,000 or 5,000. 2,000 went to the West Bank, and 2,000 should come to Gaza Strip. Now, there is a struggle on the the availability of the vaccine itself. We are not part of that. But the international community should be aware that when you don't have even enough resources to buy, I speak as I'm not a PA, but of course I speak as Palestinian, for a Palestinian authority to be able to buy the vaccine, it's a big question. This is a low or middle income country that would not be able to afford to buy that. So there are a lot of plans, some of them is getting the Russian vaccine because Russia said that they will send free of charge some vaccines to the Palestinian territories. Until now, I think there's another platform, which is through the WHO, COVAX, where 20% of, all the countries of low and middle income countries should get about 20% of their needs free of charge. And that should be paid by the rich countries, which is a known mechanism. Until now, we are not sure how much we will reach or how much we will receive. An official from the WHO said last week that I'll just check the number, that we are going to receive about 240 to 400,000 vaccines by the end of February for the whole Palestinian territories. 240 to 400, which means about 1/10 of the need, something like that. So imagine that we are already struggling with that. But again, the crazy thing is that when you have Israel, the occupier, 2.5 million, while you have 2,000 that reached West Bank last week. So this is absolutely craziness. And again, what controls us, what governs us, what we should really think about is the international humanitarian law. And this also applies to B'Tselem. B'Tselem is an Israeli organization. They are a human rights organization. And their reports are also stemming from the talk about international laws and about the international human rights laws and all these treaties that are internationally accepted. And we as Palestinians are also part of the international community, and we expect what applies to the international community should apply to us. Now, anything that is beyond the international laws, the international mechanisms, what the international community agrees upon is not, why should we accept something that is not accepted by the international laws, you know? And again, this is again something that is really a big question mark. Why sometimes Palestinians are expected to agree on things that are against the international law, and this is a question. Funding and medication is a big issue. GCMHP is 100% dependent on funding. Most of that funding comes from the international community. We are well-known, very professional organization that is non-partisan. We work for the safety of the people. We work also, our work also include the human rights issues. So we gain the trust of the international community, and we continue to receive donations from different countries through different governmental bodies or non-governmental bodies. Regarding internal resources, as you see, it's very difficult. Before 2008, we used to accept a small fee from the patients who are coming to our services, which is about £2 for the first session if you open a file, and then £1 per session, and you get the medication at the cost price. After 2008 and 2009, when things were getting further and further deterioration, we waived all the fees, those £2 and £1, and then later we had even to give the medication to the patients free of charge. Last year, we paid, we bought drugs for about $150,000, and this all went to the patients free of charge. They haven't paid a cent for that. We buy from the stock, we make a tender, and the cheapest offer we buy. Medications are available in the market, but then you have to have money in order to buy those drugs and medication. When it comes to another question about the work, well, you know, we started to use psychological first aid in 2009 for the first time in Gaza, in GCMHP. And this is something that we all need to learn, you know, because you never know when you are going to have a crisis, whatever kind of crisis, you know. The technique can be implemented or can be run or can be carried out by non-professionals, you know, non-health professionals, people who are graduates, for example, of any education. They can do that, and it's really good, and it's helpful. But you need to be trained on that, because you yourself need some kind of support later on. So we as professionals need our own support. We need some people to care after us, because when the patients empty their cups onto us, then we need also to empty our cup, because those all difficult and hard emotions need to be ventilated. We need to just get rid of them. Otherwise, we'll be ourselves either exposed to what we say secondary traumatization, or we'll be burned out, or we'll face those difficulties. So things are not that easy. Family-wise, kids, I have 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls, who are struggling with different things, like all the families. They have a working father, and we are doing well in terms of economy. I get a salary on monthly basis. But again, they haven't had the chance to go to regular school. We had to spend all the time together in the house. Going out was a big issue, visiting close friends, uncles, parents, grandparents, etc., is a big issue again. So we are one way or the other, having difficulties. Children with the schooling, again, this is another difficulty. Now they go to school one day after day because they divided. Imagine in Gaza Strip, we have on average 45 children per class. And if you have COVID, how you are going to deal with that? So the best thing that they could do is to divide the class in 2 shifts. And it's not a morning and afternoon shift, because we already have the morning and afternoon shift in the schools. The overcrowded schools, we have about 240,000 children in UNRWA schools and another 270,000 children in Ministry of Education schools, more than 500,000 children. And they go, some of them in the morning, some of them in the afternoon shift. Now those 2 shifts are divided into 2 shifts again. Like each shift will go 3 days per week in order to have just 20 children per class. Things are not well. Thank God we haven't really got the COVID-19. Yesterday I heard that our neighbors got the COVID-19, some of the cousins got COVID-19, some of the people who are for GCHP got COVID-19. But again, this is part of the struggle, part of the community, and we are doing our best to do with that. But it's very difficult to work. It was a very difficult issue to deal with the health system in Gaza Strip because it's already not developed enough. It was already developed over the years. And you speak about having just 100 ventilators in April last year. When you have 2 million people, you can imagine how hard things were. You can imagine that because of the siege and the blockade closing the entrance to Gaza Strip, the local authorities took a decision to stop entering of the people who are coming from outside for about, just they opened the gate for like 2 or 3 days per month. With those restrictions, we managed to delay, not we, but they managed to delay the entrance of the pandemic into Gaza Strip until August. So we had a 5 months through which we could, prepare ourselves. That's the idea. But when it comes to reality, that preparation wasn't really that much because the international community, everyone was trying to get into the ventilators, into et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I covered most of the questions. Let me double check. Yeah, I think I covered most of the questions. Looking for another round.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Okay, well, I've got 3 people who have indicated. Jonathan's back in, so his internet went down. So I'll take Jonathan, then Dr. Khalifa, and then David Kirby, please. Thank you. Oh, now Jonathan, where's Jonathan? Because I need to ask you to unmute, don't I? Can you raise your hands, you 3? Because I don't think none of you've got your hands up at the moment. If you raise your hands, you come to the top of my screen, I think. Right, brilliant, lovely. So Jonathan.
Thank you. Sorry, folks, my internet went down, as Jackie said. Thank you very much, Dr. Jamai, for that amazing talk. And one can only imagine the difficulties and stresses having to work in those conditions every day. And I'm sure you are a real hero to your community. One thing that struck me in your talk was the statistic that you showed, demonstrating that the situation is getting worse in Gaza every year, that the numbers are going up rather than going down. And that is of great concern. And I just wondered what your feeling was about that. And if I may be so bold as to ask you about your hopes and fears for the future of Gaza.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Dr. Khalifa?
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you so much, Yasser. It's been really refreshing hearing you speak. I think it's maybe the best talk I've heard in the last couple of years. My worry is that we, as psychiatrists and psychiatric services, we seem to not have managed to get the balance right between allowing people to develop their own abilities for coping, for resilience, for strength, for dealing with adversity, and the need for interventions. So I've noticed, I mean, I come from Egypt, so I've worked a bit in the Middle East myself. I've worked there for 6 years and then have been in England for the last 16 years. And I've seen my own observation, my colleagues' evidence is that we have been medicalizing non-medical problems. We have been disabling people by offering services all the time. We have created this dependency and we ended up not being able to manage it because of resources. And the current crisis is a perfect example. I get requests every day from different parts of the hospital asking for psychological input, like A&D on the wards, because people are very anxious about the whole pandemic and restrictions and everything. So I am worried that offering these like interventions can lead to disabling and dependency that we then afterwards are not able to meet, and we're interfering with human abilities to really have their own resilience and coping. Just I wanted to share this worry with you, but it's been lovely meeting you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That's lovely. And David Kirby, are you still here? If so, can you put your hand up? Because I can't see you, to ask you to unmute yourself. I think David isn't still here.
I think he's gone.
Okay, but Wendy's got her hand up. So let's take Wendy and then bring Yasser back in, if that's all right. Wendy, sorry, ask you to unmute.
I just wondered, is there some way that we can make donations to your organization? Because I just had a look on the website, but although there was a button that said donate now, it wasn't obvious how one could do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Wendy. Great. Okay. So I can't see any other hands, and it is 11:57. So yes, it'd be great if you could come back in, and then I suppose what I would like to say is it's been really great to meet you. It's been great to have this this introduction, and it would be really good, I think, to have an ongoing relationship. I think, was Doctors in Unite with your organisation, and so I mean, really echoing what Wendy is saying. If maybe you could tell us how we could support you as well. I mean, and do involve us in anything that we could possibly do to support you. But thank you very much. But you know, if you'd like to come back, thank you.
Okay. I'm always optimistic. If I'm not optimistic about the future, I wouldn't really be here at all, and I wouldn't be really doing my job, and I wouldn't be able even to do my job, because without faith and without hope, we wouldn't really be able to, as Palestinians at large, to survive what we are going through, you know. And another part of it is that just, you know, we are on the right course, we are on the just course, you know, and we are looking and struggling for justice. And this is something that you really have faith that no matter how it will continue, but justice will arrive one day or the other. And then the other part of it is what change you do to your people, you know, when you see a child like that girl, you know, her life changes to the worst. Suddenly she stops going to the school, or she starts feeling shy, etc., etc. And suddenly you can bring her back to her real self, you know, bring her back to normal functionings, to getting back to her regular life. Then you feel the taste of that success. That's something that really keeps you on, that keeps you enjoy what you are doing. And this is something that you do not really feel working with different jobs, but this is something that you feel rewarding, you know, at the, let me say, spiritual level, at the, you know, you can accomplish a lot of things through those feelings. And with that, we are totally against medicalizing the work in mental health. That's why since we began, we speak of a biopsychosocial model, which involves the biological part is very important, but the psychological part and the environmental, the social part is a very important one. We intervene at the 3 or 4 levels. That's why we train a lot of people. Part of the things that's happening throughout the time is that we cannot, or anyone can at all, throughout the last, let me say, 3 decades, to cover all the needs that are presented by the society. When it comes to mental health services or whatever, what we treated 4,000 people in 2020. The needs are more than 200,000 people. So there is always a need for the people to figure their own ways or means to cope with the difficulties that they are facing. The only patients that keep coming to our community centers are patients with chronic illnesses, and these are morely medical ones. But the more people who have results that are related to the traumatic event or to the living conditions, they usually improve and they get better. Thank you very much for the offer to donate. I think there are two ways that could be done. One is you can make direct donations. I can give you a couple of links. Unfortunately, in the UK, we could have only, I think, Middle Just Act, which was the ones who made the video clip about us. It's a very small charity, but they will be happy to support with that, or through our US-based twin organizations, which is the Gaza Mental Health Foundation. The other way, which could be basically through to think of a project, can send you something that could help the children, and we can say that we can tag that project that is something to be supported by, for example, Doctors in Unite. And I really would be more than happy to do that. You as organization, as establishment, let's think about that. We think what sum of money you collect, and we prepare a very nice project that will be carrying your name, so you can get involved with us on different levels. And I'm really happy for this meeting, and I hope that this will continue, the cooperation and of course the communication.
Well, thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause? You won't hear everyone because we can't unmute them, but I'll. But
thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And yes, let's liaise offline to think about something that we could support and that we could get behind. That would be really fantastic. Thank you so much for giving up your time. We know how busy you are. Thank you so much. It's really
thank you for your time. I'm taking your weekend, but thank you very much.
It's a real privilege to hear you speak. Thank you very much. Okay, and everybody else, thank you for coming. And if you don't belong to Doctors in Unite, it'd be great if you did join. And don't forget, every Sunday we Zoom at 10 o'clock. So do feel free to join us. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, have good Sundays. Bye-bye.